Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Kenneth 𝐁𝐾𝐝. Kenneth is a founder and managing partner of KRI Partners and the KRI Group. He has more than 24 years of significant real estate banking, private equity transaction, and principal investing experience. Throughout his career, he has been involved in transactions valued at more than $2 billion, much of which has included the acquisition, management, and financing of various multifamily real estate projects. With that, I'd like to welcome you to the show, Ken.
It's great to be here.
All right. Yeah, very excited. So I like to start off by asking the question, when you're at a cocktail party and somebody asks, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, I own a real estate investment and education firm.
Okay.
That's
all right.
what I do.
I like it, right to the point. That's the elevator pitch there. So, so I want to start out with you talking about one of the most important things from the standpoint of passive investors.
Yeah.
And that is what they should look at when they're looking at an operator. And I think track record just generally tops the list. Now, you took this to a higher level. I know you're a VeriVest verified operator. It's a very cool program. I'd like to ask you, first of all, about track record in general. And tell us about VeriVest, what that's done for you.
Yeah. So, well, there's a bunch of things there. First of all, VeriVest, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, something like that, I learned of them and they were in the business of vetting real estate firms like ours. Well, given my CPA background and my commercial lender background, I thought, man, this is exactly what I need because, we've been doing this for 25 years. We want to tell everyone about our track record. But who's to say that I'm just not making it up and feeding you a whole story, right? And so I was really excited to find VeriVest because what they did was they vetted guys like us, and it was really expensive. Obviously, it's a lot of work to do this, but we sent them 25, 26 years of settlement statements, tax returns, bank statements. I mean, you name it, right? They vetted everything. It was pretty painful. But 25 years of records weren't easy to find. That's what made it painful. So our entire track record's out there on VeriVest to view. Now, I'm really disappointed that they don't do that service anymore. I don't know why. They just went in a different direction. They really enjoy doing fund management and things like that. But because they'd already vetted us, and I'm sure a number of their customers, they still allow us to stay on their website. Obviously, they continue to do the annual background check, SEC check, criminal checks, all that. We pay them to do that so that, we're still not a bad guy, but it gives all of our potential investors a chance to look at a third-party site and know that somebody looked under the hood on their behalf. So I'm a huge believer. I don't know if anybody else out there is doing it, but I just think it's so valuable because it lends so much credibility to your track record because, well, it just does.
Okay. That's huge. And then the other thing that people do is they'll ask for references, but of course, nobody's going to give you a reference that's going to say much of anything damaging. So it's huge. Other than that, you really just have a very big network that will tell you exactly what is going on in the industry. So yeah, I think what VeriVest is doing is pretty amazing. Sorry to hear that they're not doing it anymore. But yeah, go ahead.
Too. Yeah, no, I'm disappointed as well because I think it's a really valuable service that the industry really, really needs because there's no way for individual investors to know.
Yeah, for sure. I know another thing that sets you apart from a syndicator, for example, is that you have multiple funds. I don't know what fund number you're on now, but maybe you can take us through. A lot of our listeners are syndicators or interested in becoming syndicators. So suppose you're a syndicator now. What are some of the steps that you're going to need to go through to become a credible fund leader?
Yeah, so funds, the only difference, let me just say, start with the basics. In the syndication world, syndicators go out, find the deal, lock it down, usually with their own money, and then go out and raise the money. So they find the deal, then raise the money. All we do in the fund world, everything else is basically the same. We go out, raise the money first, and then we use those commitments, that money, to go find deals. Makes us a massively stronger buyer, because brokers, sellers, everybody knows, guess what? We don't have to worry about these guys raising the money. They already did. So we almost become, we just become massively stronger. The certainty of close is so much higher with us. And that's why brokers and sellers like to work with us. Now, in order to be that path to go from syndication to fund, I mean, it's a lot harder to raise money that way, because I don't have a brick and mortar deal. Here, George, here's the deal I'm looking at. Here's the returns on this particular deal. Here's where it's located. Here's the address, and you can go and vet it, right? You can't do that in the fund world, because you're making a commitment up front, and you're basically giving me that blank check to go invest in things that I told you I was going to invest in terms of the business plan and the locations and the neighborhoods. So the level of trust that has to occur between that investor and the fund manager has to be considerably higher. Does that make sense? Yeah, no, it does make us a lot stronger buyer. And the reason it does is because the sellers know that we have the money already raised. And that, especially in the challenging times that we're in right now, a lot of deals are falling apart because the syndicators can't raise the money because they might have stressed out investors. But having said that, I mean, it's a tough transition to make, because the level of trust between the investor and the sponsor has to be even so much more, because they're basically giving us a blank check to figure out how we're going to invest their money. Now, in our case, they've got 18 deals to look at, and they have, we're rinsing and repeating here, right? I'm not going to suddenly get their commitment and then go off and buy an office building. That's not what we do, right? We buy the same type of apartments in the same type of neighborhoods, in the same type of markets. And so they know what we're going to do. So the thing that makes it hard is if you don't have that track record to lean on, because then investors don't have visibility into what you're able to do and what your business plan is. So it just becomes a little harder. And it's the reason that most people starting out in this business start out as syndicators, so that the investors can underwrite the deal right alongside the syndicator if they want to.
Yeah, much harder. And then whereas talking about $10,000 to $15,000 to have the legal setup for a syndication, we're talking more like $40,000 here, 3 or 4 times as much. So, one of the things in my mind is that you got to be able to go out and raise a whole lot more capital before it makes sense. Do you have any capital raising hints to help people get over that hump?
Yeah, well, our investor network is much larger than it was when we started syndicating, right? For obvious reasons. We've been successful, and when you're successful, investors reinvest. They also tell their friends. Your circle of influence just naturally grows. And so when you're doing an investor presentation, you speak more about how you make money, the types of deals that you do, what you look for in neighborhoods, what kind of upside you're looking for, what kind of generally minimum returns you're looking for. Those are the kind of conversations you have, as opposed to, hey, see this property, we're going to do the roofs on this property, we're going to do the kitchens here, we're going to see. You can't speak with that level of specificity, so you have to talk conceptually. And again, the investor has to trust that you're able to do what you said you were going to do, and that you will do what you said. Now, having said that, though, there's massive benefits to investing in a fund. Like our last fund has 3 deals in it, one in Tallahassee, one in Daytona, one in Bradenton. Those are wildly different markets, totally different parts of Florida. I mean, completely different. So they get the benefit of diversification. So you said, yeah, the cost to set it up are lower, but spread those over 3 deals, not one. You see, so It's really not that much more. I mean, we've actually structured our funds so they look and feel a lot like syndications. It's just we put multiple deals inside the fund, right? They're still, the waterfall is the same, the pref's the same, all the stuff is basically the same, because we didn't want our syndicator clients, our investors, to feel like, oh my gosh, we just completely changed. We didn't change everything. We're just doing it in a way that makes us a competitive buyer.
Yeah, exactly. And you're also generally working with more experienced operators in the fund. And as you said, it makes you a better buyer, which obviously opens up the sorts of deals that you can fund. You may have somebody who's in trouble. Hey, if there's a deadline, they're only going to take the most experienced operator, and it's got to be somebody who has proven funds. What could be more proven than to say that I've already raised the capital? Now, Now, you talk about the trust between you and your passive investors and how they have to really understand what you're doing in a deeper level. So this might be a good time to talk about your investment thesis and why you like to invest. Why are you finding the returns there?
Yeah, so our everything we do, because we've been doing it for so long, is very intentional, very deliberate. So we buy good apartment buildings in good neighborhoods and in growing areas. All three of those things are very important. That when we know that we make physical or management improvements, we can improve the cash flow of that asset. Because in our world, and in the real estate world, as you know, you make money when you grow income, when you move rents, right? Because most of that new income falls to the bottom line. So that's our business model. That has been our business model for 25 years. It's going to continue to be our business model because I don't like to buy an asset and just hope and pray that rents can go up, right? That's not what we do. We believe on the day we buy a property that we can get our projected rents because we've done the necessary work to go figure that out, right? Now, in terms of access to the deals, I just wanted to point out in the last fund that we did, those 3 deals, this is what's important. The first deal never saw the market. The second and third deal, we were not the highest bidders. So now the reason we transitioned to that fund model was because we buy a lot in Florida, right? Those are high growth markets, lots of reasons to buy there. People want to live there. The problem was everybody is syndicating in Florida. So we will be one of 20 offers, excuse me. And how to differentiate yourself? Well, I had to be price because everybody says they can raise the money, right? A little bit of reputation, but a lot about price. Now, as a fund, I don't need price to differentiate ourselves, right? The differentiator is certainty of close. And it is really important right now because so many deals are falling apart.
Yeah, huge. And then I know you have some approaches to operating that I find are a little different. One of the things I find interesting is that you've been advising people, hey, when you buy that new property, you don't just go out there and immediately start executing your business plan, trying to, jack that IRR up as high as possible. Why are you advising people should wait 30, 60, 90 days before they put that business plan into full swing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I get a lot of pushback on this. It's because of mistakes that we made very early on in our career. Imagine, well, let me back up. Business plans are dynamic. They should be dynamic. They're meant to change. The world changes, and you need to change your business plan, if appropriate, to make sure you're maximizing the return for your investors. So many people think that, oh, wait a minute, I syndicated this deal. I told investors I was going to paint the building red. I got to paint the building red. But the reality of the world is suddenly red is not popular anymore. Well, don't paint the building red just because you told everybody you're going to paint the building red. Maybe you should paint it blue, right? I'm being ridiculous with my assumption, but that's the first thing that matters. Now, why does that matter? It matters because now I take over a property and I think I did an awesome job on due diligence, right? I think I know everything about the property, but you don't. You just don't. So what happens is in the first 30, 60, usually you don't have to wait 90 days, but first period of time, you now become aware of new things. Be aware of new things. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. I didn't see that in due diligence because it's kind of a cat and mouse game when you're doing due diligence a lot of time, right, with the seller. So what I want you to do is have the ability to adjust your business plan if necessary to accommodate whatever new piece of data that might be relevant. And what happened to us a long, long time ago was we went full speed ahead and then we learned something that I wish I would have known on day 10 or 15 or 20 when I was literally spending all the money as fast as I could to get everything done. And now I had spent all the money, but now I had this new problem that I had to deal with and the money was already spent. And I could have very easily redirected those funds. Now I loaned the money to the deal and we got the work done anyway. But my point is it's a stressful situation when you realize, oh my gosh, I just spent all my money and I didn't know this. I didn't know the roofs needed to be done. I'm being silly here with my example, but that's problematic, or that could be. Now that doesn't mean
I can give you a couple examples of some weird things that have happened. I'm sure you've seen even more, but we had one property in an area where there are a lot of sinkholes. We put a sinkhole contingency in the contract. So if it caused X disruption, that we got some extra time, I think, to pay the mortgage. And fires, things like that happen. I mean, anything can happen, and you never know what'll happen next. Like, for example, do you have ordinance and law insurance? And if you don't, you probably know what happens next is they may make you renovate even the unburned portion of the building. So yeah, all kinds of crazy things can happen.
They can, and more likely, those are catastrophes, and you just have to have reserves for them. But even more likely is just something new about like I didn't realize that 2 of the roofs were bad. Okay, the roofers that were up there, they said they were fine, but they didn't do a really good job on due diligence. Doesn't matter, right? The roof still need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And now that I know that, because I've gotten leaks reported that, maybe those are the units where you couldn't get into magically, right? That stuff right. Just happens. So what I wanted to say is that doesn't mean that if you know the roofs need to be replaced, you shouldn't go full speed ahead and do those. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is don't spend all your money, and make sure that you just have, everything you could know as you're going through the process, because we actually revise our renovation plans over and over and over again, because things change, right? I learn more about the tenant base. I suddenly find, well, I thought this was going to be a big driver for rents, but as it turns out, something else is the bigger driver. So let's divert and do that instead, because it's going to get more value for our dollar invested. So those are the kind of things that I actually care about the most. And, it's really exciting to get closed, and you do need to do your improvements in a timely fashion. I just don't want you to spend all your money and then realize, oh shoot, I wish I would have known this before.
Yeah, that's huge, especially today with people needing mezzanine debt even before they have a misstep in terms of making their renovations, etc. Well, all right. So speaking of catastrophes, I know you also do property management, correct? You have in-house property management.
We do.
And
We're vertically integrated, so we manage our own stuff. We used to do some third party. We do still do some third party, but we don't do it much anymore. It's just a tough business. And so we mostly just manage our own stuff. We still have a few third party clients left, but we're not out, pounding the pavement trying to find new ones.
Fair enough. Wondering if you'd be willing to share some property management horror stories. I know everybody who's managed their property has some crazy tenant stories.
Yeah, we have all kinds of stories. Here's the thing. You're talking about people's homes, and you see someone out at the grocery store and they look pretty standard, right? I don't want to say the word normal, but they look pretty normal. Well, you follow that person back to their apartment and you go to do something in their apartment, you're like, wow, I cannot believe what I'm looking at here. So, the biggest, just if you're going to get into this business, be prepared for anything. Be prepared for hoarding. Be prepared for drug use that you never saw coming. Be prepared for, anything, because, I don't know. Probably the worst thing that happens in our business is, and this is sad, because you wouldn't see this stuff coming. Grandma lives with grandson, or I should say grandson lives with grandma, and grandma's awesome. She pays her rent, but grandson is a bad guy, and he has bad friends, and he's causing problems on the property. But grandma can't get rid of grandson because A, it's grandson, and B, grandson is just a little tougher than grandma, and she's scared. So now you're faced with a situation that you have to ask grandma to leave because she can't control grandson. It's a horrible, horrible situation to be in. But so those are some of the horror stories. Like, those are real horror stories for me, because they impact negatively someone's life. And there's nothing you can do about it. You have to fix the problem because it's impacting the other residents at the property. But in doing so, you're hurting this wonderful lady. And I'm painting just a general scenario. It doesn't always have to look like that. It could be granddaughter and grandpa. I mean, it doesn't matter. It could be mom and son. It could be whatever. The point is that when those things happen, those are the ones that actually get to me. People living like slobs and things like that. Sometimes that's okay. They do their thing. But it's when other people get hurt in this business, or somebody passes away that you were just talking to 10 minutes ago. That kind of stuff just kind of brings you back home and grounds you and makes you realize, and these are real people you're dealing with. And, I always tell our people this, you have custody of an individual's most important thing, that is their home. They can't hide their home from their relatives. They can't hide their home from their friends, right? So the level of service that you provide to them, I mean, they are basically exposed to you at the most dearest level, right? I mean, you see their kids. I mean, you see everything about them. And it's really, you have to be really careful of that and treat that whole situation with a lot of respect, because you don't want anyone coming to your home and being embarrassed. You don't want your family to be embarrassed. You don't want your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend to be embarrassed, right? You don't want anything bad to happen or anybody to be humiliated by that. So that's the biggest thing that we try to communicate to our people, so that they stay grounded and make sure that we just give amazing service to all of our residents.
All right, so let's talk about consistency. I know a lot of people, hey, you make a lot of money your first deal, second one, maybe leave your shirt, but what do you do, or what are some of your steps do you put in place, some of your practices to make sure that every time you go out there, you have the greatest likelihood of bringing back a winner?
Yeah, the number one thing is people need to do their homework. That's the number one thing. If you're going to be the one running the deal, you've got to do their homework. So we have a whole investor education division to our company. And I actually, the reason we got into that space is because there are so many people out there who are not really taking that responsibility seriously. They're not teaching people that they'll talk about, okay, you got to do a rent study, right? But they do it and talk about it at a very high level. And so what's important to me is that they really dive in and understand exactly how they function in the competitive market and so on. What it requires is the homework. Now, you've got to make sure you understand a few things in order to be successful over the long term. Number one, you got to understand supply and demand of a market. So if you have too much housing and not enough demand, it doesn't matter what you do, you are going to have a very hard time raising rents. So you've got to understand that supply demand thing. Right now, as we do this, record this, you know, there's a lot of markets with brand new inventory coming on, and not just a little, but a lot. So you're getting all this new supply being absorbed into the market at the same time. That's an oversupply situation in some markets. It's going to cause rents to go down. That's just the way it is. So I want them to understand supply and demand. The second thing I want them to understand is value creation. Like, we're a value add firm, right? If you think about any business that's successful in the world, it's because they somehow add value to the world, right? Builders add value by turning dirt into buildings, right? Apple adds value from taking a bunch of little pieces and parts and turns it into an amazing phone, right? I'm giving silly examples, but in our world, we take a property from where it is now and make it actually physically better. We run it better. We make it appeal to a different group of people. That's value creation. We're making that asset generate more cash than it used to. And then you got to understand leverage, right? The people that don't understand leverage and don't use it responsibly, they're getting destroyed right now, right? They didn't manage their interest rate risk. They didn't, that's really, really important, because these kind of things will sink you and there's nothing you can do about it. That's why I want people to really focus on it and understand it. And then the last thing is they just got to understand cap rates. It's the most misunderstood probably term out there. You know, they don't really understand what it means. And you've got to understand that, you know, interest rates, risk, perceived risk of an area, so many of these things drive cap rates up or down, that if you don't understand that, you could find yourself in a situation where you, and a lot of people are today because of interest rates, you bought at a certain cap rate, but because interest rates went up, nobody will pay that same cap rate to buy that property from you now. So if you don't have new income to offset that change in cap rate, you're not going to make money. So those four things, I think it's critical that you understand from a high level, because they can get you in trouble. And it's not about, you know, how to turn a unit. It's not about how do you lease a unit. It's not, you know, it's not about the basic blocking and tackling. It's about these macro issues that if you don't understand them, they can come and get you. And, you know, you're kind of powerless if you don't know about them beforehand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. I love that analogy of blocking and tackling. So the biggest issues as you see it are these sort of 30,000-foot view things. They're sort of macro environment things around how you're running the property. But I know you've also got a lot of tips about how to renovate properties. I know that's a lot of what you're doing to drive your gains. Now, we did talk about the need to kind of just sit back a little bit, make
Mhm.
sure that there aren't any surprises once you start to actually operate the property. Is there anything you want to add to the list?
Yeah, so the homework up front is do a good market study. So you know how much you should spend. You know how much you can move rents, right? If you can only move rents $100, you should spend a different amount than if you know you can move rents $300, right? And maybe you don't have to spend much at all, but you got to do that market study. We already talked about the flexible budget and, sitting on your hands for a few minutes. The next thing I always encourage people to do is use an outside-in approach, right? So what I mean by that is so many times I go to a property and they've renovated all the units. The units inside look awesome. The outside looks terrible. Guess what I can't do? I can't get people to the front door of that beautiful apartment. And that's a real challenge. And I feel bad because the inside the unit looks awesome. And it's based on the theory that, look, people live in the unit. They don't live outside the unit. So we want to make it nice for them. Mm-hmm. Problem is, when they're looking at leasing, people can't even get to the front door because they can't get excited about the outside. So always do outside in. That's what I like to do. That just makes the most sense. Plus, whatever dollar I spend, I only spend it one time. When I do it in a unit,
every tenant who lives in that building is benefiting from having better landscaping or fresh paints. It's huge. It's immediate. And then another thing I've noticed is that when you come in and you raise the rents and people are upset, they wonder, well, hey, what am I getting for this? And you at least have one thing you can point to. You can say, hey, we're improving the exterior. We're going to get to the interior, but right now this is what it costs to live here.
You're exactly right. They see the difference. They see what's happening. So what you do, when we do this, we actually start as if you're driving up to the property. What do they see? I try to see the property through their eyes. That's hard for people, especially if you're going to the property every day. Because, let's think about this. How many times have you gone to work and realized, man, I don't remember going through that light. You don't even look anymore. Your brain just tunes that out. That's what happens when people go to the same property every day. So you've got to be very, very intentional about how you view the property. And so you're watching, you want to see the property from their eyes all the way to the leasing office, the amenity package. I want to get them. Remember, what's the movie? You Had Me at Hello. What's the Jerry Maguire? Remember the Jerry Maguire movie when he walked in and she said, hey, you had me at hello? That's what I want to do with tenants, with prospective tenants, because then all I have to do when I get to the unit is not screw it up, right? I don't need to rely on the in-unit incredible improvements to try to impress them. They've already been blown away from the amenity improvements that we made. We just have to not screw it up inside the unit. So that's the biggest thing I would add.
Yeah, that's huge. I've had those conversations too. Yeah, definitely start from the outside in. So before we wrap up, just want to make sure this is impactful as possible. And so what sort of, entrepreneur, investor are you trying to have reach out to you to create synergy with? In other words, who should be reaching out to 𝐿𝐞𝐲?
Yeah, so there's really two types of people who should reach out to us. One is somebody who does not want to get their hands dirty. They just want to be a passive investor, and they want to invest with a firm that's got a long track record, lots of years, done plenty of deals, and, has had good success, right? So that's a passive investor. The alternative is, there are plenty of people out there who want to quit their W-2 job. They're house flippers. They want to move up, but multifamily is a different world, and they want to learn how to do that. That's what our investor education platform is for, because, I just see so many people trying to get in this business. They're not able to learn what they need to know to really do it well and do it right. And as a result, a lot of people don't do so well in their investments. And that bums me out because, back when I started, it was really hard. There was no podcast like yours. There was no course. There was no nothing, right? I mean, I went to apartment associations and tried to become buddies with the person that spoke that day, right? That's how I learned the business. You don't have to do that now. And so we can really accelerate your progress when you learn from somebody who's been doing it for 25 years. And we help you avoid the things that we talked about today is a good example. We help you avoid some of those mistakes, because if we can mitigate the downside, most of the time the upside will take care of itself. So either one of those two types of people should reach out to us, because we can help you. It just depends on where you're at in this game and how you want to participate in it. I would just encourage everybody to seriously consider participating in it, because it's just obscene amounts of money that can be made in this business.
Well, yeah, we're in the midst of a major housing crisis. So for good reason, as you said, I mean, that's how you make money in our capitalistic society. You got to provide value. Nobody lets loose that dollar
No,
for anything other than equal or greater value. So awesome. Well, hey, let's head into the rapid fire round. I've got a few questions that I'd really love to hit you with, if you don't mind. So if you could be known for only one thing, what would it be?
Helping other people figure this business out.
What's the greatest lesson in leadership you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Lesson in leadership, as an entrepreneur, so that kind of conflicts. So as an entrepreneur, the biggest lesson I've learned is to get out of my own way, right? To start realizing that the only thing that's slowing progress is usually yourself, because you can't see yourself being wherever it is you could go. You always, I don't know why we do it as human beings, but we seem to do that. So that's the biggest thing. In terms of a leadership, leading an organization, I mean, the most important thing is that if you're going to grow as a leader, you find ways to bring everybody else along with you and help them become better, because then everybody wins. And that's what we do with our company is, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone every single day. And I promise all our people, I'm going to do my best to get you out of your comfort zone. And I hope you're okay with that, because what's going to happen is you're going to become better. You're going to feel better. So that's the biggest leadership lesson that I've learned over the last several years.
Nothing like personal growth when it comes to satisfaction in life. What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
Trust and integrity. We have a moral compass that I will never bend.
All right. Well, I almost feel bad because that's very deep.
No worries.
We're going to go from the profound to the perhaps not so profound. Just tell me when to stop cutting the deck.
Now.
All right. Top of the deck. Where would you most like to travel?
Ooh, where would I most like to travel? You know what? We cruise all over the place, and I want to go to Alaska on a cruise ship. We just did a European cruise. It was the most incredible way to see Europe. I think I'd like to do Alaska the same way.
Huge. That's on my list as well. I've done the Caribbean cruise. I think next up for me is going to be the transit of the Panama Canal.
Ooh, that
I'd like
sounds
to, to go from Valparaiso to San Juan in 2 weeks with 3 days through the canal. That's the next. But second on the list has got to be Alaska. So love cruising. All right. Well, I think we're going to talk more about going by boat in a minute. But name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader and entrepreneur, and tell us why.
Name a what? A book?
Yeah, a book. So talking
a
lot about entrepreneurship and leadership. So, but literally anything about business or investing.
Yeah, it's Cardone's 10X rule. It most resonates with just the way I run my life. It's just, you need to take and give it 10 or maybe even 20. 10's probably not enough. You need to give it 20x effort, because that's what it's going to really take to get it done. And it's true. I've seen it over and over and over again.
What's the biggest hurdle you've overcome in your business in the last year or so? And what did it teach you?
Well, the biggest hurdle I think everybody's overcome in this business in the last year or so is Mr. Powell taking the short-term rates from next to nothing to a whole lot, right? I think I don't know where it's at now, mid fives or mid four, whatever it is. Right. I mean, that's a massive jump in interest rates. And when you think about we're in a capital intensive business, that's a big challenge for people to deal with. And we've dealt with it well. And it's partially because we drew on our experience from 07, 08, 09. We went through that financial crisis, and the lessons learned there have always stuck with me. And we've always used those lessons to help mitigate the risk. So that's why we didn't get hurt. But that's the biggest challenge I think everybody is facing in this business right now.
All right. Can you send us out with a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, the biggest quote, this is this is me. I think it's me. I don't think I stole it from everybody. You are where you are right now because you have chosen to be there. That goes right along with my comment earlier about you got to get out of your own way, right? If I would have understood this 15, 20 years ago or earlier, I certainly would be even farther ahead than I am now. So you are where you are because you choose to be there. And some people don't like that, but I just think that's really what's going on, because I've seen the changes that people can make if they just change their mindset and realize, stop limiting yourself. You can do that, whatever it is that you want to do.
That's huge. So I'll say we just have one last one for fun, see how this goes.
Sure.
But I see you're in Ohio, and I think from Northeast Ohio. And I got to say, I love your state. I've got my boat in Catawba Island, but love the Northeast as well. I've been to Conneaut. There's some great vineyards out there. Had just an amazing time. Love the port out there too. As I remember last time I was out there, there was some great music. You just dock your boat, and then you enjoy some awesome barbecue and live music. But I don't know, just give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your state and how you enjoy it.
Yeah, so I spend about half my time in Florida, by the way. I have, done a lot of things. I've been blessed with the ability to do a lot of things here. When I was back at Deloitte, I learned to fly on my lunch hour while I was downtown Cleveland at Burke Lakefront Airport. I would literally just drive 2 minutes to the airport.
Home of aviation, by the way, Ohio.
Yeah, huge, huge. So that allowed me to enjoy the state. I mean, the seasons are great. I don't like the fourth season. I won't lie to you. I do not like snow not one bit. If I could have a 3-season state, I'd be happier. But and the weather is pretty nice in the summertime. It's not as crazy hot as Florida is. So my wife and I, it's my family. My kids are grown now. For the past 20 years before they were grown, or 25 years, it was all about going to their sporting events and things like that. I mean, the one thing I like about the Cleveland area, and most people will say this to me, oh, you're from the Midwest. I can tell. I said, well, how do you tell that? Because you just act like you're from the Midwest. You're just a grounded, down to earth type person. And apparently that's a differentiator from all of us from the Midwest. I don't know. I never thought of ourselves as being really any different than anybody else, but that is a perception that a lot of people outside the area seem to have. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I've come to enjoy the state.
Yeah, awesome, amazing. And I love that. You know what I'm talking about, but the old National City Bank, which is now that amazing restaurant, one of my favorite places to go. Every time I'm in Cleveland, it's the Marble Room, just so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
right, anyway, so with that, we'll get serious again and make sure that people know how to contact you. So email, website, carrier pigeon, smoke signals. What's the best way to get in touch with Ken Gee?
Yeah, go to KGEE at KRIpartners.com. That's my email. Or you can just go to KRIpartners.com. And if you're interested in investing, just go to KRIpartners.com/invest. So KRIpartners.com gets you there. And I'd love to hear from your listeners to answer any questions they have, or kind of get to know them. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to thank you warmly for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience. Thank you, Ken.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.